What if the ridiculous American house Europeans laughed at on TV was never exaggerated at all? What happens when the oversized kitchen, walk-in closet, multiple bathrooms, garage, basement, and backyard are suddenly standing right in front of you, and they belong to an ordinary family? That is where the joke changes sides, because once people actually step inside American homes, Hollywood starts looking less like fantasy and more like it was simply telling the truth. The kitchen was real. The first thing that ruins the Hollywood exaggeration theory is often sitting right behind the front door. An American kitchen that looks suspiciously similar to the ones Europeans have spent years seeing in sitcoms. The wide counters, full-size refrigerator, walk-in pantry, deep sink, generous cabinets, an island big enough for breakfast, homework, and an argument over who finished the coffee are not always studio tricks. In many American homes, that setup is simply Tuesday. That became especially noticeable during the wave of international travel surrounding the 2026 World Cup, when visitors moving through American host cities encountered something television rarely explains properly. American homes can be designed around a completely different rhythm of daily life, and the kitchen is where that difference becomes impossible to miss. Take London. Plenty of British kitchens are beautiful and highly efficient, but older terraced houses and converted flats often work within narrower footprints, shaped long before anyone imagined a refrigerator with 2 doors and an ice dispenser. Paris has the same historical reality in many Haussmann-era apartments, where kitchens can be compact and separated from living spaces. Amsterdam goes even further in some of its famously narrow canal houses, where centuries-old architecture rewards clever use of vertical space rather than sprawling floor plans. Then America hands the kitchen its own little zip code. The island is not merely decorative. It can become a breakfast table, prep station, buffet, laptop desk, and unofficial family headquarters before noon. The refrigerator is sized for households that may drive to a supermarket and buy groceries for several days at once. A pantry makes sense when cereal, canned goods, snacks, paper towels, and Costco-sized packages all need somewhere to live without turning the countertops into a supply depot. That is where the cultural difference becomes more interesting than the square footage itself. Much of suburban America developed around cars, detached homes, and larger residential lots. Daily routines followed that geography. People drove farther, bought more at once, entertained at home, and gradually built houses that supported those habits. The kitchen became less of a room where cooking happened and more of a command center where family life kept passing through. European cities evolved under very different pressures, including older building stock, denser neighborhoods, and stronger traditions of frequent local shopping. Neither system is automatically better for everyone, but when Europeans arrive expecting television America to be pure fantasy, the reality can be wonderfully disorienting. That enormous refrigerator really may exist. So does the pantry behind the door. The island is not hiding a camera crew underneath it, and perhaps that is why the American kitchen wins people over so quickly. It feels generous, without needing to announce itself, practical without looking clinical, and comfortable in a way that encourages everyone to stay 5 minutes longer. After a few weeks of coffee around that island, late-night leftovers, and enough counter space to set down every grocery bag at once, even the most skeptical visitor may start wondering whether Hollywood was exaggerating America at all. Maybe it was simply filming what was already there. The garage wins. One of the fastest ways to understand an American house is to ignore the front door completely and watch where the family actually enters. In a huge share of suburban homes, daily life comes through the garage, carrying grocery bags, backpacks, sports gear, muddy shoes, and whatever oversized package somebody swore was too good a deal to leave at Costco. That detail says more about American housing than a chandelier ever could. The garage is often treated overseas as a place where a car sleeps. In the United States, it behaves more like a backstage area for the entire household, according to U.S. Census Bureau data on newly completed single-family homes, roughly 2/3 have a 2-car garage, while a significant additional share are built with space for 3 vehicles or more. That is not a niche luxury tucked into a few wealthy neighborhoods. It has become a normal part of suburban design across large portions of the country. Now compare that with London, where car ownership is far less central to daily life, and a large share of households do not own a car at all. Parking may mean a permit on the street, a rented space, or a narrow driveway that deserves applause every time somebody reverses into it without touching a hedge. Amsterdam goes even further in the opposite direction, where bicycles, trams, and compact streets shape everyday movement far more than attached 2-car garages. America built around a different rhythm, so the house adapted. That is why the garage can feel strangely luxurious, even when it contains absolutely nothing. Luxurious. You drive home during a thunderstorm, press one button, roll inside, and unload groceries without stepping into the rain. In winter states, there is no scraping ice off the windshield before breakfast. In summer, the family can move directly from an air-conditioned car into the house, while the July heat waits outside like an unpaid salesman. Then comes the part visitors rarely expect. The car is often only one tenant. The remaining square footage becomes a workshop, bicycle rack, tool wall, freezer station, sports locker, holiday decoration warehouse, or improvised home gym. American garages have launched famous companies, hosted garage bands, and witnessed millions of fathers stare at shelves for 20 minutes while insisting they know exactly where the screwdriver is. That flexibility is what makes the feature so easy to love. A European visitor may first notice the size, but the real appeal usually arrives later when routine starts becoming easier. Wet umbrellas stay outside the living room. Suitcases have somewhere to disappear. Bulk purchases no longer compete with furniture for floor space. Children can drop muddy soccer cleats before crossing the house. The garage quietly absorbs the mess of ordinary life, so the rest of the home does not have to. This is one reason American suburban housing can look excessive from a television screen, but feel remarkably sensible once experienced in person. What seems like extra space from abroad often turns out to be a carefully placed buffer between the household and everything daily life throws at it. After a few weeks of pressing that remote and driving straight inside, parking half a block away in the rain can suddenly feel less romantic than it used to. America did not simply give the car a room. It accidentally created one of the hardest conveniences to give up. Laundry gets a room. Some American luxuries announce themselves with marble countertops or a 3-car driveway. This one usually contains a bottle of Tide, a basket of unmatched socks, and absolutely no intention of impressing anybody. Yet a dedicated laundry room may be one of the most quietly addictive features in an American home, precisely because its value does not become obvious until somebody lives with it. The idea is wonderfully straightforward. Washing clothes deserves its own territory. That sounds almost comically ordinary in the United States, but it reveals a surprisingly deep difference in how homes are organized. The National Association of Home Builders has repeatedly found laundry rooms near the top of American buyers' wish lists. In its What Home Buyers Really Want research, roughly 9 in 10 buyers rated a laundry room as either essential or desirable. Americans are not asking for a ballroom. They mostly want the place where wet towels, detergent bottles, and Sunday night panic can remain behind one door. Cross the Atlantic and the domestic map changes quickly. In Britain, especially in older terraced houses and smaller flats around London, Manchester, or Bristol, finding the washing machine beneath a kitchen counter is entirely normal. Space has been negotiated that way for generations. In Paris, compact apartments often force laundry equipment into bathrooms, kitchens, or narrow utility corners. Amsterdam's famously slender housing stock can make every square meter work overtime. So dedicating an entire room to washing clothes may sound rather American in the best possible sense. The American version removes one tiny annoyance after another until people begin wondering how they ever ignored them. Laundry baskets no longer migrate through the kitchen like plastic wildlife. Detergent does not share cabinet space with cereal. A dryer can run without turning dinner conversation into an appliance soundtrack. Dirty sports uniforms, muddy towels, and bed sheets can disappear into one controlled zone instead of becoming temporary furniture around the house. That convenience becomes even more noticeable in homes where the laundry room sits near bedrooms or connects to a mudroom. Whoever designed that understood something every parent eventually discovers. Clothing is apparently capable of reproducing when nobody's watching. There is also something very American about giving an unglamorous job enough space to become easier. American housing has often embraced a simple principle that visitors may initially mistake for excess. If a task happens constantly, why make the house fight against it? That is where this feature becomes more than square footage. A dedicated laundry room turns household maintenance from something that invades other rooms into something those rooms barely have to notice. The kitchen remains a kitchen. The bathroom keeps its floor space. Clean clothes have somewhere to be folded before somebody inevitably leaves them in the basket for 3 business days. Nobody flies across the Atlantic dreaming about laundry. Yet after spending a few weeks in an American home where the washer, dryer, shelves, hamper, and cleaning supplies all live together, that humble little room can become strangely difficult to surrender. The nicest conveniences often work that way. They do not shout for attention while you have them, but the moment they disappear, suddenly everybody notices. America somehow managed to give laundry its own office, and frankly, the socks have earned it. The hidden floor. Just when an American house appears to have shown everything it has, somebody opens an ordinary-looking door and reveals an entire staircase going underground. For many European visitors, that moment feels slightly unfair, because the house has apparently been hiding another level, like a video game, that forgot to mention the bonus stage. The basement is one of those American features that looks extravagant, on television until its logic becomes obvious in real life, according to U.S. Census Bureau data on new single-family construction. Roughly 1 in 5 newly completed American homes in recent years has been built with a full or partial basement, while the share rises dramatically in colder parts of the Northeast and Midwest. In those regions, foundations often need to extend below the frost line anyway, so turning that excavated space into something useful becomes a very American piece of practical thinking. And Americans rarely leave useful square footage alone for long. What begins as foundation space can become a family room, workshop, guest bedroom, children's play area, home theater, bar, office, storage zone, or some wonderfully chaotic combination of all 7. Somewhere in suburban Pennsylvania, there is almost certainly a basement containing a sectional couch, a treadmill covered in clothes, Christmas decorations from 2009, and 1 refrigerator dedicated entirely to beverages. Nobody planned the collection, yet somehow it makes perfect sense. That domestic habit feels especially unusual beside cities such as London or Paris. Cellars certainly exist throughout Europe, particularly in older houses and apartment buildings, but they often serve storage, utilities, wine, or communal building functions, rather than operating as a fully finished extension of everyday living space. In many London terraces, gaining another usable floor often means converting a loft or undertaking an expensive basement excavation. Parisian apartment buildings may have individual caves downstairs, but calling one a family room would require extraordinary confidence and probably several contractors. The American basement therefore represents something more interesting than simply a bigger house. It shows a culture that looks at leftover space and immediately asks what else it could do. A growing family needs a playroom, so downstairs changes. Remote work arrives, and one corner becomes an office. Teenagers want somewhere to watch movies without turning the living room into mission control, and suddenly the basement earns another promotion. The room keeps adapting as the household changes, which is why living with one can become surprisingly addictive. That flexibility also explains why American homes seen on television can mislead foreign audiences in an unusual way. The screen makes the basement look like bonus luxury, while Americans living there may see it as ordinary overflow space that protects the rest of the house from everyday clutter. It is where holiday boxes disappear, hobbies become permanent, relatives can sleep during Thanksgiving, and children can make noise without every adult in the building learning the soundtrack. Perhaps that is the detail television never quite communicates properly. American housing often feels generous because the space is allowed to evolve alongside the people using it. Once someone has lived with an entire downstairs level waiting to solve tomorrow's problem, a cupboard under the stairs suddenly has very serious competition. Closets became rooms. There is a point inside many American homes where the word closet starts feeling almost dishonest. A closet is supposed to be a place where you open a door, reach for a coat, and close it again. Then America hands you another doorway, enough floor space to walk inside, shelving on 3 sides, 2 hanging levels, room for suitcases, shoes, winter coats, and perhaps a small chair if somebody is fully committed to the lifestyle. At that point, Europeans are forgiven for wondering whether the clothes have somehow become tenants. The walk-in closet is a particularly revealing American invention because it says less about fashion than it does about how much Americans value keeping everyday life organized and out of sight. U.S. Census Bureau figures show that newly completed single-family homes have typically had a median floor area above 2,000 square feet in recent years, giving builders far more freedom to treat storage as part of the architecture rather than something added afterward. Homebuyer research from the National Association of Home Builders has also consistently placed walk-in closets, especially in the primary bedroom, among the features buyers strongly prefer. That sounds ordinary, orangey, until you compare the housing history. In Paris, beautiful 19th century apartments can offer high ceilings, decorative molding, and balconies worthy of a perfume commercial. While built-in storage may be surprisingly limited because those homes were designed in an era when freestanding armoires did the job. In Amsterdam's narrow canal houses, every centimeter has been negotiating for survival since long before anyone owned 20 pairs of sneakers. British Victorian terraces present a similar puzzle, where alcoves beside fireplaces often end up holding wardrobes because the original floor plan simply never promised a dedicated dressing room. America made a different bargain with space. If people are going to own things, give those things somewhere proper to live. That decision changes the feel of a bedroom more than visitors expect. Clothes disappear behind a door instead of occupying a freestanding wardrobe along an entire wall. Suitcases stop living on top of cabinets. Shoes no longer form a tiny suburban development beside the bed. Even the dreaded chair covered in clothes loses some of its job security. There is something almost therapeutic about walking into a closet and seeing everything at once. Nobody needs to perform IKEA archaeology just to find a winter jacket. And this is where the feature becomes dangerously easy to love. A walk-in closet does not make daily life more glamorous. It makes it calmer. Bedrooms look less crowded because storage has been pulled away from the room itself. Couples can divide shelves without conducting territorial negotiations across one narrow wardrobe. Seasonal clothes can stay in the house without visually reminding everyone that December will eventually return. That practical generosity is one reason American homes often feel different from what foreign television audiences expect. From outside the country, a walk-in closet can sound like a celebrity indulgence. Inside an ordinary suburban house, it often behaves more like household infrastructure. Perhaps that is the recurring American trick. Take something slightly annoying, give it 10 more square feet, and watch the problem quietly disappear. After a month of walking into your wardrobe, instead of wrestling with it, going back to one narrow cabinet can feel like trying to pack for Thanksgiving inside an airplane overhead bin. America gave the clothes their own room, and somehow the humans ended up feeling less crowded. Bathrooms multiply nothing exposes the difference between two housing cultures faster than 6 people getting ready at the same time. In many American homes, that does not automatically become a morning traffic jam outside one bathroom door. Somebody is brushing their teeth upstairs, another person is showering in the primary suite, a guest is using the powder room downstairs, and the family somehow avoids holding the kind of hallway negotiations usually reserved for airport gates. That convenience is far more significant than it looks on television. US Census Bureau housing data has consistently shown that the overwhelming majority of newly completed single-family homes are built with at least 2 bathrooms, while a substantial share include 3 or more. What American viewers may barely notice has become a defining feature of modern suburban housing. Bathrooms are distributed around the house according to how people actually move through it. The contrast becomes clearer in older European cities. London is full of Victorian and Edwardian terraces that were built before indoor bathrooms became standard, meaning later generations often had to fit modern plumbing into layouts designed for another century. In Paris, many elegant pre-war apartments were similarly created under very different domestic expectations. Rome has its own beautiful historical housing stock, where thick walls, inherited floor plans, and complicated plumbing routes can make adding another bathroom considerably less casual than drawing a rectangle onto a blueprint. American builders had the advantage of creating huge amounts of housing much later, when indoor plumbing was already expected and family routines had changed. Instead of asking one bathroom to serve every bedroom, guest, and morning emergency, many houses spread the workload around. The downstairs half bath may be the smartest example. It sounds almost laughably minor until people live with one. Guests no longer need a guided expedition through somebody's bedroom hallway just to wash their hands. Kids coming in from outside do not have to sprint upstairs. Thanksgiving dinner can involve 12 relatives without accidentally turning one bathroom into America's busiest public facility. There is something wonderfully practical about that. Multiple bathrooms also create privacy in a way square footage alone cannot. An ensuite means parents and children are not sharing every bottle, towel, and 5-minute deadline before school. A guest bathroom allows visitors to feel welcome without feeling as though they have wandered into the family's medicine cabinet. Even a simple powder room downstairs quietly separates public space from private life. That is the part visitors can become attached to surprisingly quickly. The luxury is not marble, rainfall showers, or a bathtub that looks ready to launch a yacht. The luxury is knowing that when somebody says, "I need the bathroom," nobody else has to check the schedule. In many European homes, especially older ones, families have become exceptionally good at sharing limited facilities because the architecture demanded it. America often took another route and let the architecture absorb the inconvenience instead. After living with that arrangement for a while, one bathroom for an entire household can begin to feel less charmingly traditional and more like everyone has accidentally subscribed to the same calendar. Americans did not reinvent the bathroom. They simply realized that families might appreciate having more than one. Backyard jackpot. The most persuasive room in an American house sometimes has no ceiling at all. Open the back door in many suburban neighborhoods and the property keeps going, past the patio, past the grill, across a lawn where a Labrador can finally run at full speed without immediately entering somebody else's jurisdiction. That is when the familiar American backyard stops, looking like a sitcom accessory, and starts making dangerously good sense. Recent US Census Bureau housing data puts the median lot size for newly built, detached single-family homes at roughly 8,400 square feet, or about 780 square meters. That figure includes the house itself, so nobody's receiving a private football field with the keys, but it helps explain why ordinary suburban properties can still have enough outdoor ground for a deck, garden, children's play equipment, barbecue area, and a respectable patch of grass. The cultural contrast is easiest to understand in cities where land has spent centuries becoming precious. London's Victorian terraces commonly stretch backward into narrower private gardens while sharing walls with neighbors. Amsterdam's canal houses famously solve expensive frontage by becoming tall, narrow, and deep. Central Paris is dominated by apartment living, courtyards, and public parks rather than detached houses sitting behind private lawns. Those places have their own enormous charm, but American suburbia made a completely different bet. What if ordinary family life received some breathing room outdoors too? That choice changes behavior in ways television barely explains. A backyard can turn dinner into a cookout simply because Tuesday evening happens to be pleasant. Kids can make enough noise to prove they are alive without every activity requiring a trip somewhere else. Dogs gain space that does not come with an hourly reservation. Friends arrive, folding chairs appear, somebody opens a cooler, and suddenly an ordinary patch of grass has become the cheapest event venue in America. Then comes the distinctly American transformation process, because apparently leaving a yard alone would be too easy. One family adds a fire pit, another builds a deck. Somebody plants tomatoes with the confidence of a Nebraska farmer, despite possessing exactly 6 plants. A neighbor buys a smoker large enough to suggest that brisket has become a constitutional responsibility. By July, the backyard is no longer merely property, it has developed apartments. That freedom is what becomes addictive. Private outdoor space lets the home expand according to the season without adding another wall. Morning coffee moves outside in spring. Summer brings burgers and sprinklers. Fall means football playing from an outdoor television, while someone insists the grill can remain operational until Thanksgiving. Even winter gives the yard a new job when snow arrives. For visitors accustomed to dense European capitals, the surprise is not that Europe lacks gardens, because it certainly does not. Britain has a deep gardening culture, France has magnificent rural homes, and Germany's allotment tradition shows how strongly Europeans value outdoor space. The difference is how naturally a substantial private yard can appear as part of mainstream suburban life across huge areas of the United States. That makes the American backyard feel less like extravagance and more like personal freedom measured in grass. After getting used to opening one door and finding your own little piece of sky, waiting outside, returning to a balcony, large enough for 2 chairs and 1 courageous flower pot, can require some emotional negotiation. America did not put another room behind the house. It simply forgot to build the roof. Maybe the biggest surprise was never that American homes looked larger on television. It was discovering how much thought had gone into making everyday life easier, warmer, and more comfortable. Once you experience the kitchen, garage, basement, closets, bathrooms, and backyard as parts of one lifestyle, the stereotype starts falling apart. So which American home feature would be hardest for you to give up? Tell us below and subscribe for more stories about the America people only understand after experiencing it.